3 weeks to go until the draft. What have you been working on today?
So one of the things that I'm interested in trying to run down, because Brian, I know we always hit this, right? Like we hit around draft season, and when draft day comes around, there's always going to be like one or two guys where it's like, whoa, that's a surprise. And then the rest of the league tells us like, well, that wasn't a surprise to us. That's where that guy was going to go. And so I was trying to figure out like, who are we too high on? Who are we too low on? Like the one name I had heard about that a couple of months back was I was told like the entire media is way too low on Travon Walker. And now I think you're starting to see, Travon Walker is going to go like top 5 from Georgia, the defensive end.
Sure.
And so I was trying to run down some of those names, and in that process, I got a couple that I'm interested in. First off, Brian, did you get the sense at all? Like I think a lot of the media was assuming that the Kyler Gordon testing, the corner from Washington, had not been good enough to keep him into the first round. And I know Dane, who we all think very highly of, I think had Kyler Gordon as player number 51 for him today. I've been told the league views Kyler Gordon as much closer to Trent McDuffie, who is like the number 1 corner in the draft or number 2 behind Sauce Gardner. I've been told the league views Kyler Gordon much closer, and that it's not likely that Kyler Gordon's going to get out of the first round. So that's one name that I thought was interesting. Another one is you're starting to see some momentum pick it up. I know we thought early on that a guy who was a sleeper was Christian Watson, the receiver from North Dakota State.
Yeah.
And the league was like, no, that guy is actually pretty good. Apparently there's been an overcorrection on the media's part now, and they're saying, maybe he sneaks in the back half of the first. And I was here, no. That guy's hands, he's still got some stuff to work on. He gets a case of the drops at time. I don't know that I trust first round player there, but there's always going to be a few players that we're not totally sure about. I think there are some genuine slides that you're not anticipating. CD was that way, I think, when the Cowboys got him. I don't think the rest of the league thought he'd be there. Cowboys certainly didn't. But overall, there are just some players that we're going to have to find out on draft day that we were just all a little off on.
Okay, I have a couple follow-up questions, Brian, and I'd love to get both your thoughts on it. Why do you think there's the difference in what this media scouts and what the league scouts are saying on some of these guys' value?
I mean, a lot of times they know things necessarily, like they may know things about background work on. That's one of the big things you can't tell from the outside. You can't tell what kind of football character the guy has, what kind of work ethic they have, and that can fill in some gaps when you know those things, or if you know somebody's a lazier player, that can tell you why, no, we're not. That's one of the big hits on Jalen Weidermeyer. The league kind of knew he was not a great athlete. I mean, I think you saw on tape he wasn't elite, but the league also knew apparently there were some bad work habits there. And I think you saw that at his pro day where he tests horribly. And it's like, that looks like a guy who didn't really work very hard during the pro day cycle to get himself ready. And so those are kind of things that you get a sense of. They were one of the prime examples I think you look at was Colton Miller, the tackle from UCLA a few years back. A lot of people thought that was a third-round guy on tape. The league bet on his projection and what they knew about his work ethic and what he could become, his athleticism, took him in the first round. Now he's become a really good tackle. And so that's just generally where you see the gaps. They know the red flag issues. They know what the work ethic is, and that's the kind of stuff that you can never know from the outside.
Yeah, Bobby's absolutely right. I mean, you get there, and the worst feeling in the world is when we're working on these drafts or we're going through it, and then we're like, Hellman will ask, or we'll do the show, we'll go, and he'll go, well, who's your best player available? And then you end up, like, for the next 2 hours, you're saying the same guy, the same 2 guys, and then right then and there, it's like, something is not right with this guy. Something's not right. There's not a medical that's right. There's not there's an off the field issue going on here. There's a case over his head. See, the problem is media scouts, we don't have access unless you have friends. Like I said, I mean, I know a lot about the LSU kids because I have friends at LSU. Mm-hmm. I'm able to ask, what's wrong with Stingley? Well, they're able to tell me, what's wrong with the linebacker? What's wrong with Ingram? So you're able to kind of fill that in. And that's where the scouts, the real scouts, they're able to put guys up on the board because they understand, like, we'd never take this guy. We would never take that guy. Oh, we really like this guy.
Yeah.
Because, again, the medicals and stuff like that. And
they're not sharing that info because it might be.
No, they're not. They're not sharing that. And so that's the biggest problem, Mike. That's the fear I have when we get to day 2 or day 3 and we go, well, who's your best player left? Well, I've got 3 guys. And then it turns into like 2 rounds later. Well, who's your best player? And it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And you're going, man, I botched this. I got to the point where I don't even say the guy's name anymore.
I remember one player specifically in recent years who was like that, not for a medical, but was for a work ethic, was for a personality type thing. I'm sure you remember him, Brian. You remember the slide of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Oh, sure.
Where everybody was like, that was like a second-round player. And he goes in the fourth, and then you start asking around. And once the draft is actually going on, people they feel a little bit more free to talk about like why we didn't like this guy or whatever. And you immediately started hearing like, we don't like his football character. We don't like the way. And so those things matter to these teams.
Lyle Collins.
Yeah.
Lyle Collins was everybody had Lyle Collins as like a first or second round guy. And on your board, you say, well, who's the best player? Well, Lyle Collins. And then you start to say, man, this case that's going on in Baton Rouge is probably going to kill him on getting drafted. But those are the things. There's people, these scouts, they know a heck of a lot more.
The Rams, for instance, their area scouts no longer scout players. That's something known in league circles. They don't ask their area scouts to evaluate players' film at all. They literally just use their area scouts now as basically private investigators.
Yeah.
Like, we'll use analytics to figure out the players. You go tell us who they are as people and what their work ethic is and fill in the things that a computer can't.
So if Gordon is closer to the first or second best corner, what are the chances Stingley makes it to 24, the LSU corner? How many are going to be taken before the Cowboys?
So he tested really, really well at the LSU Pro Day, but I don't think that was ever the question with Stingley, right? It's about
if he really loved football.
It's about, does he love football, consistency, his health at times? I think those are some more of the questions. I just think somebody's probably going to bank on the ceiling there and say that, like, well, that guy's, quarter, we see such a premium being paid on receivers right now, right? Like the cost is going through the roof. And so typically when you see that happen, when you see defensive ends get paid a lot, it goes back the other way where it says, okay, well, we got to pay the guys to stop those guys similarly. And so I think you see with the run on receivers and people valuing receivers so high, the trickle down of that is you're going to start seeing a higher run in the draft and higher prices being paid in free agency for corners. And so I really don't think Stingley gets there. Kyler Gordon might be around when the Cowboys pick at 24. I mean, I don't think that's totally unreasonable, but I don't think he's slipping out of the first round. And he's a guy that, I think the Cowboys think pretty well of. I think they think he's a good player. I just don't know that the value will be there for them to say, well, let's go get a fourth corner.